rules about preaching on the fourth Sunday of Eastertide. One rule is unofficial and almost invariably abided by, it's difficult to say. The other is official and more often ignored. The official rule, most often ignored, is that one is supposed to preach about vocations. The unofficial rule, which everybody seems to follow, is that nobody wants to preach on this Sunday, which I find slightly puzzling, I must say. The Good Shepherd is a slightly difficult concept. When you read chapter 10 of St. John's Gospel, you realise just how complex it is. There's a lot in it, almost all of which I'm going to ignore, thus making myself quite happy to preach on this Sunday. And delighted to preach about vocations. There is nothing for me easier than saying to each one of you, if you are eligible, you should definitely think about being a Dominican friar or a Dominican sister. And if you're not eligible, well, you must have friends or relatives who are, so have a word with them if you would, please. Now, the Good Shepherd has two characteristics on which I want to concentrate on. The first is that he lays down his life for the sheep. The Good Shepherd chooses to die because he loves the sheep more than his own life. He manifests that love which is stronger than death, the love which is so strong that it gives him the power to take up the life that he has laid down. The second characteristic of the Good Shepherd is that he is recognizable. My own know me. The Good Shepherd is distinctive. The bad shepherd can shout himself hoarse, can yell until he is blue in the face, but it will do him no good. All the charm, the skill, the manipulation, the spin, the leader's debates, the armies and media machinery that he may have at his disposal. If he is a bad shepherd, the flock will go on chewing and bleating to the intense frustration of the shepherds. But the Good Shepherd is recognizable and people listen to his voice. What I think is most important of all, though, is that there is a link between these two characteristics. The Good Shepherd is recognizable because he lays down his life for the sheep. This is the great theme of St. John's Gospel. I've spoken about this to you many times. You will have heard me talk about moths and woodlice if you've been here often enough before, and if you haven't, asked me about it afterwards. Suffice it to say for the time being that Christ on the cross, manifesting the divine love for humanity, is like the light on the lampstand, like this candle behind me, drawing moths to the flame, attractive to those who recognize in it that it is the manifestation of the love of God, that it is the standard that has been raised on the cosmic battleground, and we must flock to it. As often when I talk about this kind of thing, I talk about how Christ came to separate the moths from the woodlice, those who are drawn to the flame from those who scurry away into the darkness. But as is often the case, what I say is not the ultimate truth. And in particular, in respect of St. John's Gospel, this separation is not fundamentally what Christ is about. It's not what he came for, ultimately. Not to separate the moths from woodlice and sheep from goats. Ultimately, he came that we may all be one. Deep in the heart of every human being is the recognition that what lies at our origin, what is the ultimate purpose and meaning of our life, is love. The love of Christ on the cross. The love of the Good Shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. That shines deep in the heart of each of us. But sometimes it is very deep indeed. Buried deep down under our pride, our foolishness, our self-importance, or our fear. Buried deep down under the sadness and suffering that the world so often brings. But in today's Gospel, Jesus tells us that the mark of the Good Shepherd, what makes it distinctive and recognisable to everybody, and what will ultimately unite all humanity into one flock, is this perfect, life-giving, self-giving love. Every human being, if they open their eyes properly, can see Jesus dying on the cross, and can see Jesus rising in triumph from the grave, and can say, yes, now it all makes sense. This is what it has all been about. This is the universal vocation. And be sure that it is a vocation, not a lifestyle choice. No vocation is a lifestyle choice. And the universal call to Christian holiness is not one way of making sense of the world, to be picked off the shelf in the supermarket of ideas. As St. Peter tells us in our first reading, there is salvation in no one else. Jesus is not a good shepherd, he is the good shepherd. So let's recall that the image of the Good Shepherd is not about being corralled into a pen. It's not about being kept within a fence. It's about being led out, brought into safety. And we have recognised that only Jesus Christ can do this. That the pattern of life that Jesus showed us and made possible for us is the only one that makes sense. It's the only one that conforms to the deepest reality of our lives that we recognise in him. We have seen that Jesus Christ is the only one who can lead us to safety, the only alternative to falling prey one way or another to the wolves. So then we are all called as human beings to follow Jesus Christ. We are all called as disciples. But there is more. Lest you dislike the idea that you are a sheep, there is more good news for you. The sheep who follow the Good Shepherd become shepherds themselves. St. John tells us in our second reading, we shall become like him, because we shall see him as he really is. We might say that our journey in following Jesus Christ is also a journey into becoming Christ. As we take his path, as we walk the way that he has opened for us, we are transformed into his pattern of life. We are given a share in his divine life. We, like him, accept the charge from our Father to lay down our lives that we may take them up again, to live lives of loving service, to give ourselves in a love that is stronger than death. And so the sheep become the shepherds, the led become the leaders, and all of us are charged with leading the rest of humanity into the promised land, the sheepfold of God. All of us are called to be the recognisable voices of divine love and wisdom in a world of hatred and folly. Now, it's important to say what I'm not saying. I'm not saying, be a good example, imitate Jesus, and then you'll be allowed into the sheepfold. It is quite the other way around. It is because we have been called into the sheepfold, because we have been granted by pure grace to come to know the love that has called us into being, that we cannot but respond to this call. We cannot but allow this love to transform our lives, because we cannot but yearn to show the world what we have found. Now, there are many ways of showing the world the love that each one of us here has found. As I said to you at the beginning of this sermon, I recommend this way for those of you who are eligible. Do think about it. There are leaflets at the back of the church. Why do I say this? I often joke that the reason that I pray for vocations is that I want someone to look after me in my old age. Actually, I think now I'm all right on that score. I'm now worried about people who are going to look after the young ones in their old age. But that's not really why. The truth is that it is selfish for me to urge you to consider the religious life, the Dominican life, because the pleasure of something really delightful is always more delightful the more it is shared.